I'm Adrian Seet, and Nightline begins right now. News making the headlines. Indonesian maids are to arrive early next month. And Boris Johnson bids his farewell to 10 Downing Street. Thanks for joining us. Yang di-Pertuan Agong Al-Sultan Abdullah Riyatuddin Al-Mustafa Billah Shah and Raja Permaisuri Agong Tunku Haja Aziza Amina Maimuna Iskandaria on Tuesday granted an audience to Singapore's Deputy Prime Minister Lawrence Wong and his wife Lu Zilui at Istana Negara in Kuala Lumpur. In the meeting, which lasted 30 minutes, the King and Wong touched on several issues of mutual interest, including the special and long-standing close bilateral relations between Malaysia and Singapore. In a statement, controller of the royal household for Istana Negara, Dato Sri Ahmad Fadil Shamsuddin said Al-Sultan Abdullah expressed the view that as neighbouring countries with deep historical and people-to-people ties, Malaysia and Singapore need to continue to work closely in various fields and levels, especially in the recovery phase of post-COVID-19. His Majesty also said, as two close neighbours, Malaysia will continue to commit to strengthening relations and cooperation with Singapore. The Yang di-Pertuan Agong also expressed his appreciation to the Singapore government for his upcoming 3-day state visit to the island republic starting September 19th, which will further strengthen bilateral relations between both countries. Wong and his wife and his delegation then attended a luncheon hosted by the King and Queen. Wong is currently on a 3-day working visit to Malaysia. Singapore is Malaysia's second-largest trading partner last year, with a trade value of $64.43 billion. The arrival of Indonesian maids in Malaysia will only begin early next month. Association of Employment Agencies Malaysia, PAPA President Dato' Foo Yong Hui said the delay was due to the documentation process at the Indonesian Embassy in Kuala Lumpur, which could only be carried out after September the 1st and would take about 1 month to be completed.
Sebab itu kita Indonesia baru lift itu moratorium. Dia baru lift moratorium itu, jadi since last month dia baru membuka semula. Jangka saya rasa semua siap itu masuk bulan Oktober lah saya rasa. Bulan Oktober baru boleh masuk.
Dato' Fu added that only a small number of new Indonesian maids had arrived in the country, which requires at least 30,000 domestic workers to fulfill the existing demand of Malaysian employers. On April the 1st, both Malaysia and Indonesia signed a Memorandum of Understanding on the Employment and Protection of Indonesian Domestic Workers, PDI. However, on July 31st, Indonesian government announced a freeze on its workers entering Malaysia due to a dispute over the country's maid hiring system. The ban, however, has been lifted by Jakarta effective August the 1st. In a bid to settle disputes amongst small and medium enterprises, SMEs, and boost cross-border e-commerce activities, the government will set up a new online dispute resolution mechanism. In announcing this, Prime Minister Datuk Sri Ismail Sabri Yaakob said a one-stop centre will also be established to ensure SMEs have better access to programs supporting digitalisation. In a statement on Tuesday, Datuk Sri Ismail Sabri said the government will also bolster cooperation with Microsoft Malaysia on cybersecurity and to curb online scams to support the government's digitalisation plans. The cooperation, he said, will include forums to raise awareness, technical training and workshops for the public and private sectors. Besides that, he said the government will also monitor the status of gig economy workers so that they have adequate legal and financial protection. The government will also establish a sharing economy committee that will be led by the Communications and Multimedia Ministry to streamline programs and initiatives related to the sharing economy at the national level that involves the public and private sectors, academicians and the community. The Prime Minister also said the government will also implement strategies to support the development of an Omnibus Act through the Public Sector Data Sharing Policy and the National Data Sharing Policy to make the country's data sharing ecosystem more conducive. Datuk Sri Ismail Sabri announced the initiatives after chairing the National Digital Economy and 4th Industrial Revolution Council meeting on Tuesday. On another note, the Prime Minister said Digital National Berhad (DNB) was looking to increase 5G coverage to 40% of the population by year end and to double it to 80% by 2024. So far, DNB has rolled out 5G coverage to 30% of the population. Meanwhile, at an event on Tuesday night, Datuk Sri Ismail Sabri called on the heads of diplomatic missions to come up with creative approaches in attracting foreign investors back to Malaysia and at the same time to focus on opening market opportunities to export local products. He said this is crucial during a time when the world is actively looking for stable investment destinations post-COVID-19 pandemic.
Kerjasama bersepadu rentas agensi merupakan kunci utama untuk memastikan pelaburan asing ke dalam negara akan terus mengalir sekaligus membantu proses pemulihan ekonomi negara.
He said this in his speech when officiating the 9th Heads of Mission Conference at the Foreign Ministry in Putrajaya on Tuesday. The Prime Minister also announced that the government would increase the monthly allowance for civil servants serving abroad with effect from January the 1st next year. There is no need to amend the law to prohibit those being tried in court from contesting in the coming elections. Minister in the Prime Minister's Department for Parliament and Law, Datuk Sri Wan Junaidi Tuanku Jaafar, said the existing election nomination conditions enshrined in Article 48, subsection 1 of the Federal Constitution are sufficient to address the matter. In a statement on Tuesday, Datuk Sri Wan Junaidi said Article 48, subsection 1 provides that a person would be disqualified from being a member of the House of Parliament if he or she was sentenced to more than 1 year in jail, fined more than 2,000 ringgit and fails to obtain a pardon. Therefore, he believed there was no need to add other conditions to tighten the existing nomination eligibility, as it would only make the nomination process more complicated. He was responding to a proposal made by PAS Ulama Chief, Dato' Ahmad Yahya, that the government amend the law to prohibit individuals being tried in court from contesting in elections. Meanwhile, for those who have been elected as members of parliament, Datuk Sri Wan Junaidi said their membership would not be revoked unless the conditions under Article 48, subsection 4 of the Federal Constitution relating to members of parliament who have been convicted and have not been pardoned were met. It stated that when the last process, which is the pardon, fails, then the membership of the Member of Parliament is automatically terminated. The implementation of the targeted petrol subsidy will be continued to support the economic recovery phase currently. Finance Minister Datuk Sri Tengku Zafrul Abdul Aziz, however, stressed that the subsidy implementation in the future would also depend on the economic conditions and crude oil prices.
Itu semua terpulang kepada keadaan ekonomi kita kerana kalau ada subsidi bersasar pun kita tengok harga pasaran pada masa itu ya. Kalau pada harga pasaran pada masa itu adalah rendah, mungkin tidak perlu pun subsidi bersasar.
He told this to reporters on the sidelines of the Wild Digital Southeast Asia 2022 event in Kuala Lumpur on Tuesday. Datuk Sri Tengku Zafrul added that the implementation approach for the targeted petrol subsidy is still under review by the ministry, which will also consider the move to use technology application to channel subsidies to target groups more efficiently while preventing abuse. He also stressed that now is not the right time to implement targeted subsidies, as the country's economy is still in the recovery phase while inflation remains low compared with other nations. Meanwhile, Datuk Sri Tengku Zafrul said the additional dividend of 25 billion ringgit announced recently by Petronas will be used for government expenditure besides covering the subsidy costs, which are expected to reach up to 80 billion ringgit this year. The investigation papers relating to the leaked court documents on former Prime Minister Datuk Sri Mohamad Najib Tun Razak and his wife Datin Sri Rosmah Mansur's cases have been handed back to the police for further probe. Kuala Lumpur Police Chief Dato' Azmi Abu Qasim said the papers on both cases were handed back the first time after being referred to the Deputy Public Prosecutor DPP on August 30th, and the papers were referred again on September the 5th, but were handed back yet again for several details to be completed. He also said if there is a need, the statements of every witness who was summoned before this will be recorded again. He added that police are doing their best to complete the investigation papers as soon as possible after obtaining advice from the DPP. A total of 27 individuals were called up to record their statements, 17 related to Datuk Sri Najib's case and 10 for Datin Sri Rosma's case, after the Chief Registrar's Office of the Federal Court lodged police reports over the alleged leaked documents. On the trial of the misappropriation of funds from One Malaysia Development Berhad, 1MDB, the Kuala Lumpur High Court on Tuesday was told that Datuk Sri Najib had 2 credit cards with a combined limit of 3 million ringgit, believed to be one of the highest credit limits ever given by AmBank. During examination-in-chief by Deputy Public Prosecutor Nadia Muhammad Isha, former Vice President of AmBank's Retail Banking Fraud Management and Authorization Department, Yeo Eng Leong, said Datuk Sri Najib had spent nearly 104,000 ringgit with the 2 platinum cards in 2011. The 35th prosecution witness also said both credit cards were cancelled in March 2015, adding that normally the bank would award the credit limit to customers based on their income capacity. The Pekan Member of Parliament is facing 4 charges of using his position to obtain bribes totalling 2.3 billion ringgit from 1MDB funds and 21 charges of money laundering involving the same amount. The trial before Judge Dato' Colin Lawrence Sequeira continues on Wednesday. The prosecution, in its closing submissions in Datuk Sri Ahmad Zahid Hamidi's graft trial, said on Tuesday that public servants cannot seek and accept funds, including political donations. As a matter of fact, it was pointed out that it is an offence to do so under the Penal Code. At the Shah Alam High Court, Datuk Raja Rosela Raja Toran, who leads the prosecution team, said the former Deputy Prime Minister must be seen as a public servant who falls within the ambit of the Penal Code first, as opposed to a politician holding a ministerial position. She said that his wages are paid by the government with taxpayers' money, and he is paid to serve the public and not for the public to serve him by delivering cash every month. Datuk Raja Rosela also told Judge Datuk Yazid Mustafa that the law did not recognise political donations, and hence politicians receiving monies and calling them political donations made a mockery of the law. She highlighted the allegation that Datuk Sri Zahid, who is also Home Minister, received monthly payments from Ultra Kirana Sdn Berhad UKSB for 4 years. Datuk Sri Zahid's lead counsel, Hisham Teh Potek, in his rebuttal of the prosecution's submission, said political donations were now recognised as a defence. Datuk Raja Rosela said that given that it was done monthly for over 4 years, UKSB had paid him and not UMNO. The defence will continue submissions on Wednesday, when both the prosecution and the defence have been asked to submit on the issue of payments made without using UKSB's account. Protests erupt in Indonesia as anger simmers over fuel price hike. Stay with us. Welcome back. Boris Johnson bowed out as British Prime Minister on Tuesday, ending a tumultuous 3 years in office and bequeathing his successor Liz Truss a daunting list of problems to tackle. Johnson, who was forced out of office by his own Conservative Party over a series of scandals, urged the country to come together and back his successor.
In only a couple of hours, I will be in Balmoral to see Her Majesty the Queen. And the torch will finally be passed to a new Conservative leader. The baton will be handed over in what has unexpectedly turned out to be a relay race. And I will be supporting Liz Truss and the new government every step of the way. Thank you all very much. Thank you and goodbye. Thank you.
After making the farewell speech, the 58-year-old left London to travel to Scotland and tender his resignation to Queen Elizabeth. Following the resignation, Liz Truss has officially become Britain's new Prime Minister after an audience with Head of State Queen Elizabeth II at Balmoral in Scotland. Buckingham Palace in a statement said the Queen has requested the new leader to form a new administration upon her appointment. The former Foreign Secretary is expected to return immediately to Downing Street to give an address to the nation before beginning to appoint her cabinet. One of her first significant acts as Prime Minister is expected to be an announcement on plans to tackle the energy price crisis. In the meantime, Prime Minister Datuk Sri Ismail Sabri Yaakob has congratulated Liz Truss on her appointment as the United Kingdom's new Prime Minister. In a social media posting, he wished her well in her endeavours. The Prime Minister also hoped that the bilateral ties between both nations would remain strong for the well-being of the people of the two countries. In Indonesia, thousands of people protested on Tuesday demanding the government to reverse its first subsidised fuel price increase in 8 years amid soaring inflation. Under pressure to control a ballooning energy subsidy budget, President Joko Widodo previously said he had little choice but to cut the subsidy and let fuel prices rise by about 30% in the country of 270 million people. It was claimed that the move is set to further elevate food and energy costs, which surge on the back of Russia's war in Ukraine, as well as append Indonesia's plan to bring down inflation to below 4% next year. Trade unions who were leading the charge in the archipelago, however, are arguing that the price hike will reduce purchasing power at a time of rising inflation and stagnant wages. Protests took place in and around the capital Jakarta, including in the cities of Surabaya, Makassar, Kendari, Aceh and Yogyakarta. Typhoon Hinamnor battered through southern regions of South Korea early on Tuesday, dumping a meter of rain, destroying roads and felling power lines. Prime Minister Han Duck-soo ordered for evacuations in flood-risk areas, with over 3,000 people having already been evacuated and 14,000 others advised to leave their homes. Around 20,000 homes were left without electricity, while hundreds of flights were halted. Government officials had put the nation on high alert for days as Hinamnor approached, warning of potentially historic destruction and putting in motion life-saving measures.
12 pasukan berentap demi menjulang Piala Idaman. Kami bawakan kepada anda perlawanan tumpuan Liga Super 2022. Hanya di TV 9 dan Astro 149.
On to sports, tennis, the 2022 US Open. Francis Tiafoe ended Rafael Nadal's 22-match winning streak at Grand Slam tournaments by beating the 22-time major champion in the last 16. 24-year-old Tiafoe, seeded 22nd at Flushing Meadows, reached the second major quarter-final of his career as he claimed a 6-4, 4-6, 6-4, 6-3 victory over Nadal. He also became the youngest American man to get that far at the US Open since Andy Roddick in 2006. Nadal had won both of their previous matches without dropping a set. Also in the last 8 was Yannick Sinner. The 11th seeded Italian reached quarter-final stage of all Grand Slams as he rallied from 2 games down in the 5th set to beat Ilya Ivashka 6-1, 5-7, 6-2, 4-6, 6-3. Joining them, Carlos Alcaraz. The 3rd seed outplayed Marin Cilic in a 5-set thriller 6-4, 3-6, 6-4, 4-6, 6-3 to move into quarterfinals. In the women's category, Karolina Pliskova reached the last 8 following a hard-fought 3-set win over Victoria Azarenka. The Czech number 22 seed snatched the first set 7-5 after Azarenka had squandered 2 set points serving at 5-4. Azarenka, however, fought back in the second, taking a 7-6 win. Pliskova showed the greater stamina though and powered through the decider to complete a 6-2 victory in the decider. The 2016 US Open finalists will next face Arna Sabalenka for a place in the last 4. The 6th-seeded Sabalenka came from a set down to beat Danielle Collins to reach the quarterfinals. She came back from a first set defeat to record a 3-6, 6-3, 6-2 victory. After this breather, smuggled cigarettes worth 7.7 million ringgit seized. Welcome back. The presence of a forensics team from the Federal Police Headquarters in Bukit Aman at the house of former TV3 personality Zalina Azman has raised questions from residents in the area. A message shared on WhatsApp about the presence of police at her home has gone viral. Shah Alam District Police Chief Assistant Commissioner Muhammad Iqbal Ibrahim, who confirmed the presence of the forensics team, said the Bukit Aman forensics team inspected the house of the missing person to see if there is any new evidence. The inspection, however, did not find any fresh leads. Authorities are searching for the former TV3 personality who has been missing since November. Zalina was reported missing after her son, Mikael Norman, failed to contact her for several days beginning November 24th to inform her that her father had been hospitalized. Over in Johor, 1,029 boxes of smuggled cigarettes worth 7.7 million ringgit, including tax, were seized in a police raid in Kempas on Monday. State Police Chief Datuk Kamarul Zaman said police confiscated about 51,000 cartons of cigarettes of various brands. However, no arrests were made during the 12:30 p.m. raid on a warehouse at Taman Perindustrian Majujaya. In a separate case, Datuk Kamarul Zaman said police have also arrested a 42-year-old local man at a petrol station in Taman Abad on Monday, suspected of being involved in the purchase of subsidized diesel. Also seized in the 2 a.m. raid was a lorry loaded with subsidized diesel. The team also arrested another man, aged 29, at Taman Ungku Tun Aminah and seized 17,722 ringgit in cash, believed to be for the subsidized fuel transaction. The police then raided another subsidized diesel storage in Jalan Belati. Following the raid, police have nabbed 3 foreign nationals, aged 26 to 34, and seized 46,000 litres of diesel worth 159,722 ringgit, a lorry and a receipt. The suspects have been handed over to the Domestic Trade and Consumer Affairs Ministry for further investigation under the Controller Supplies Act 1961. Now, China successfully sent a new batch of remote sensing satellites into space from the Xichang Satellite Launch Center in southwest of China's Sichuan province on Tuesday. The satellites will be mainly used to conduct scientific experiments, land resource surveys, agricultural product yield estimation, and disaster prevention and reduction. Let's take a look at the blast-off as we wrap up Nightline this time around. I'm Adrian Seet. Thank you for watching and stay safe, Malaysia.